Greg Fellers, you are the head vet of the Riding Tie Association, and you are getting ready to retire. And so you are here on Tongue Tied so we can learn from all of your experiences and wisdom. So, welcome to Tongue Tied Riding Tie Interviews.
Thank you, Courtney. It's great to be here. Yeah, thank you.
You hold an amazingly unique spot because you were only one of two head vets in all of riding tie history. Jim Steer was our first, and you have been our second. And so I want to start all the way back in those early years. How did you first hear about riding tie, and how did you end up becoming our head vet?
Okay. I was an associate veterinarian for practice in the San Jose area in California. And one of my clients, who was an Arabian horse breeder, had competed in the Levi, but he wanted to do a local ride and tie and be able to show off his own horses. And so Don Brown was his name, and he talked to me about this event, which I had only heard of ride and tie, kind of from a distance. I really didn't know that much about it. So he talked to me and wanted to do this, and his ranch was right next to the foothills in the Almaden area, and with a large regional park with actually some rather decent trails. And so we kind of just talked about, okay, what if they go out for, an 8 mile loop and come back and we get a chance to check the horses. And so this had to have been about 1974 or 75. So that was, and we really just did this seat of the pants. And so that was the first time I worked a ride and tie as a veterinarian. And then after uh, after that San Jose area, myself and a classmate started a practice in Loomis, California, which is over to the east of Sacramento in the foothills there. And we had another client there who had been active in ride and tie, and she put on a ride and tie that went right along the trails next to Folsom Lake. And that was the first time that I had a chance to actually compete in a ride and tie.
Okay.
So that had to be about 78 or thereabouts that I competed in my first ride and tie. So that's how I got started.
Okay. And then how did you move into becoming into the organization, becoming the head vet and all that kind of thing?
Okay, so in that foothill area over the next 8 or 10 years, I competed in one or maybe two ride and ties each year, kind of all over that foothill area. So got to know a bit of the ride and tie community. You know how that is.
Yeah.
Um, and the Ride and Tie Championships were going to be up in Mendocino County, clear over on the north coastal area of California. And Jim, of course, was a head vet. And he asked me if I'd come up and help him do that. And that had to be, oh, around late 80s, early 90s, somewhere in there. And he uh, then had me back to help him do the championships for 3 or 4 years. And then at Mount Adams, which was up in Washington, probably around, I'm going to guess about 95 or late 90s, Jim wanted to compete in the championships and asked me if I'd take over being head veterinarian. And so that was my first time heading it up. And then Jim unfortunately passed away later that same year. So that was the last ride and tie that he was involved in at up in Washington.
Yeah.
So I kind of more or less inherited it from Jim. It's nothing really official per se. And I had all Jim already asked me to start sitting in on board meetings.
Mhm.
So I already, when I did that one at Mount Washington, I pretty much already knew the board members and were familiar with the group and our sport. So it was sort of a bit of a seamless transition, I guess you would say.
All right.
And so here I am, all,
Great.
all, all these years later,
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I love about ride and tie and actually endurance as well is that you can't just go and compete and go home. You're going to have to camp out overnight and that kind of thing. And that gives you the chance to sit around the campfire and tell stories and whatnot. So I want to do that with you just a little bit. So I want to go all the way back. I did not know until just now that you had competed some. So
yeah.
tell me a story or two about competing in ride and tie, and then I'm going to move into some betting stories. But tell me about a story or two about competing.
Okay, a good one is the second time that we did the Lake Folsom ride and tie, I got Kathy, my wife,
Mhm.
to I talked her into doing it with me. This is a person that Kathy's never really been that comfortable around horses. She's one of those gals that she never grew up around horses, never had any affinity for horses at all. But she was capable physically, a
Mhm.
runner, an athlete. So again, we borrowed a horse from an Arabian horse client there, and we actually went over to their ranch and took turns riding this horse and trying to get a little bit comfortable. And so we started out with her running and me with the horse right there at the beginning because that's when everything can go a little bit sideways, as we all know. And she didn't want to be on that horse at the start. So and we were going to do very short legs. So I only rode about a mile and got off and tied the horse. And Kathy uh, came along and was able to get on the horse. And she was trotting along, thought she was doing good. And the horse, now this is a horse that already knows the territory. They get ridden on those trails all the time. The horse arrives at a junction with this trail coming in from the left, and the horse knows a left turn is going home.
Mhm.
So the horse turned left, and Kathy kept going straight. And so I'm at the vet check, and I thought she'd be coming in pretty soon, and I wait and I wait and I wait. I'm getting more and more worried. It's like, oh, you start going through worst case scenarios. And I'm kept looking back at the trail, hoping that I'd see him come in. And she comes walking in from the other direction
Oh
from
no.
behind me. And, it's then, oh God, what happened? And then she described that the horse dumped her and then proceeded to run all the way home.
Home, yeah.
And she managed to to thumb a ride back to the ranch to make sure the horse was found and okay. And then she had to get a ride to the vet check in a car. And so at the awards ceremony at the end of the ride, we got a ribbon for ride and try.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And that's such a classic ride and tie story because you just never know what's going to happen. And then once it happens,
Yeah.
you've got to figure out, how do I fix this? And sometimes your partner is not any help because they're waiting for you at the vet check. Whatever. So that is a wonderful, wonderful story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was an experience, and I did not get Kathy to do another one.
There may be some wisdom in her there.
She's worked with me on, gosh, I don't know, 100 ride and ties, a bunch, but then wasn't going to compete again.
Yep. That's
So
great.
I
That's great.
had to find new partners.
But you two are a wonderful partners at the vet check, and that's my all of my memories of the championships in the East that you have done. It's really been the two of you. She's been scribing for you, and that kind of thing. It's really neat. So.
Yeah, and she's once she got the hang of it, I'd start BSing with the rider, trying to get a little lowdown on how they're doing and how their competition is doing. And Kathy would point out that I'm only halfway through the exam. You need to complete it and allow these people get going.
Yeah. That's also great and classic riding ties. So many families are involved, and we do try to kind of make each other better. So that's good.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. All right. Go see Mr. Good. Yay, Dr. Powers.
What do we put for attitude?
Full of it.
We'll say B for attitude. A- overall.
Okay.
Horse is full of it, but otherwise fine.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
So let's now move into the head vet at Ride and Tie. Give me some memories, and I know that this is tough because you've over 100 races and pushing probably 30 or more championships. But what are some things that stand out for you over your career?
Well, the very first one that I was responsible for at Mount Hamilton in Washington was memorable. The weather was not helpful. We had rain most of the time, and so everybody's trying to make do and keep their spirits up in the crummy weather. Muddy trail, and you get into a vet check and it's so darn cold. You're throwing blankets on the horses, and they're shivering and trying to get their heart rates down. So that was a challenge. Another one that I think was important for me was when I came to the East Coast. I think it was 2016. I'm not absolutely sure, but it was when Sarah hosted the first East Coast Championships in South Carolina on the Clemson campus. And it was beautiful. The venue, the equestrian center there at the university was gorgeous. All the trails through the Clemson's own forest. Beautiful weather, great fun, and of course it was my opportunity to meet most of the East Coast ride and tie community for the first time. So that was a memorable one.
You will be interested to know that they are building now a vet school in that same general area, and the trail is going to run right by the vet school, which is going to be really cool in years to come when we have races there. So.
The other one I want to mention is when the East Coast hosted the first championships, and Bob and Janice Heldebridle put that on, and that was a real pleasure. That was a great event, good turnout, and it was just such a successful event to have it hosted on the East Coast.
My story about that one, which relates to you, otherwise I wouldn't tell it because this is your interview and not mine. but our horse Cruz came off of the trailer lame, and I was just devastated. Here we are, the first ever world championship, and I'm not going to compete because my horse is lame. And you worked with him, and you had us trot out several times, and you finally said, I think he is just a little sore and a little stiff from being on the trailer for 9 hours or whatever. And fortunately, the first event was a 4 mile just fun run, and
But
and I can still hear your voice in my head, because you said, let's clear him for the 4 mile. It's not going to hurt him to go 4 miles, and let him do that, and then we'll see how he does, and we'll see whether he can compete later. And
he
he
can
actually,
step up.
yeah, and he won the 4 mile, which wasn't really the goal, but he did. And then the next day, my brother-in-law Mark and I competed in the long course, because he did loosen up, and you cleared him, and we finished fourth, which we are very proud of for that. But you're the way that you didn't just say he's lame, you're done, go away. But you helped us. But I also knew you were not going to let that horse run if he wasn't able to, and that's what I want. I didn't want to hurt the horse. But I sure wanted to compete too. So thank you for that. And that's my big memory about that one.
That's when you've been in it long enough, and again, it's helpful to have been a competitor for a while. I understand both sides of that equation, and then also knowing that I've seen enough and I know enough that I feel like I'm a pretty good judge when the horse is okay to go and when it's not okay to go. So, I mean, that's why I'm there. That's
Right.
why we veterinarians are there, is to provide that help uh, for the competitors, but also ultimately provide that protection for our equine teammates.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, you mentioned West Coast and East Coast, and Jim Steer never had the opportunity to come to East because we weren't very big in the East before he came along.
No.
But tell me a little bit about some of the compare and contrast an East Coast race and a West Coast.
Um, the main contrast is that the West Coast events had almost always been standalone events. Whereas in the East Coast, you folks were able to get started by being part of an already existing an endurance event with the venue, with the trails, with the vets, and just working to allow a few ride and tie teams to compete as well. And so that was the first time I actually ran into an East Coast ride and tie. Was I was asked to come back to help vet the Big South Fork endurance ride, and there there were just there was a ride and tie there, and I don't think there were more than 3 or 4 teams involved. And I thought, oh, this is interesting that they've attached onto an endurance ride, and it really works. I mean, now the East Coast has 10 times the number of events that are happening on the West Coast, and I think. To be honest, the West Coast is going to have to kind of rethink, in that new paradigm of how much more difficult it is to put on a ride and tie as a standalone event, and how much sense it makes to put it on in conjunction with an endurance ride.
And
So that's a shift that needs to take place on the West Coast.
and that is a pretty nice segue to hopes and dreams that you might have, and also the fact that your successor is Nick Kohut, he's the new ride and die head vet, but he also is the president of the AERC. And so, although we are two different organizations, that those partnerships are vital, and so hopefully that can happen. More east, west, and the middle of the country. It'd be great to get more in the middle too.
Yeah, exactly. When I was back there at the Iron Mountain Championship this year, I had a chance to talk to Nick, and he, more than any other veterinarian that I'm aware of, is probably as active and involved in as many East Coast events as anybody back there. Then, like you say, he's president of AERC, so he has some terrific creds there. And then we've had Nick out two or three times at least to help with the Tevis.
Mm-hmm.
And Kathy and I hosted the night before everybody has to gather up at Roby Park on Friday to vet horses in. So we had them up at our cabin Thursday evening so we could sit around and eat dinner and drink beer and get to know each other a lot better. So, I feel a kind of a kindred spirit with. Yeah. So I think it's a great step. I'm looking forward to it.
The plans are in works for you to be the ride and tie head vet emeritus. So you're not done yet. We're not going to let go of you quite yet. But hopes and dreams that you have for ride and tie.
Oh boy, I think the ride and tie organization will become more closely associated with AERC. I think it's they need that stability of that size of that organization, the financial resources, and so I don't know if it'll ever become a real formal association, like has been suggested, but there'd be much to work out there. But I think the future of ride and tie will be in association with AERC, and like I mentioned on the West Coast, I really hope that model can be utilized more and more in the West Coast, and like you said, in the middle. It's just seems like it's just kind of beginning to kind of formulate a little in Texas and Kansas and up in Minnesota. So I think it's going to happen. I'd say 10, 12 years ago, ride and tie was really starting to dwindle down to seriously low numbers, and our financial resources were somewhat in question. So I think we've come back from that, and I see us doing better. I think I see this sport continuing, infinitely, because it's such a great sport and great people that are in it.
Boy, that's a great way to put it, because you're right. The two things that keep me in it are the great sport and the great people. So absolutely, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Good.
So I look forward to, as long as I'm got a brain and I can remember stuff and I can articulate, hopes and dreams for the sport, I hope I can continue to contribute to the board.
Well, let me thank you first personally for all that you have meant to me, both as a vet at events and when I was on the board and we were on the board together, the leadership that you give and gave to the board. So thank you for all of that you've done for me. Thank you for all that you've done for the sport. And then thank you in advance for all you're going to do in the future, because I'm thankful that you're not saying I'm done, I'm out of here completely, but you're going to keep plugging along, and that's great.
I'd like to. And Courtney, in return, I got to thank you for, when you stepped off the board, but you were willing to continue as editor. The newsletter has been huge. I remember I was part of some of the discussions with there was an AERC subgroup, a working committee that met with a group from the Ride and Tie group, and we talked about pluses and minuses that each can bring to the table. And Chuck Stolley said, the Ride and Tie newsletter just is so much better, he said, than the endurance news, and it is. It's a great publication, and all the photography and the personal articles are great. I look forward to it.
Definitely a labor of love. It's not work. It's a lot of fun to do.
It's terrific.
Well, thank you again, and we will see you out there on the trails in days and years to come.
Will do, Courtney. You take care.